So Joel, I'll just get you to give me the thumbs up. Good to go. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou talofa. Good evening. Thank you for coming together, elected members, members of the public who are watching online, members of staff and friends of council who have been helping on this Wheels to Wings project. We're going to open with karakia. Kia ora. Thank you, Simon.
Ka haia te ata, ka hapara te ata, ka koreki te manu, ka wairori te kutu, ko te ata nui, ka horaina, ka taki te umeri, he pō, he ao, ka awatea.
Thank you, Simon, and welcome everyone to this briefing. I've got some notes that I just want to cover off to make sure we're clear about the purpose and the run of tonight's webinar. This is focused on community board members who are not members of the Wheels to Wings joint the panel. It is to ensure that you've got the best possible information as you prepare your submissions for the hearings panel that will be meeting early in the new year. Yet to be confirmed date, but it will be somewhere around February, March, or anticipated to be. For members of the public who are watching live or who are watching this being recorded, you will have the opportunity to speak at that hearing. If you are wanting to submit, you will be contacted in the new year to confirm a time. This is not a decision-making meeting, it is for information for these elected members. And we are operating under COVID level 2 restrictions, which is why public aren't present in the gallery physically tonight. And within the chamber itself, we'll just maintain physical distancing through the evening. So we have a run tonight where we're going to invite members of the project team, management, to present information on the project, to provide an update on activity that's happened since in the last few months. We're then going to have a brief comfort stop break, and that will be somewhere around 10 minutes to the hour, and then we'll have a focus on discussion based on what you've heard. And I'm mindful that, Bridget, you need to leave early, and that's fine. We'll work with you if there are questions that you want to ask. I also understand that we may have at least one community board member online who will be watching this briefing. I'm just listening to the audio. Was there a little bit of feedback? I'll just get you to, maybe tap it down a little bit. Thank you. All right, I think that's the framing that we need for tonight. Lynette, can I invite you to open the presentations? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for coming down. I'm going to keep my little bit really brief, and we want to try and keep our presentation as brief and as detailed as we can. I know that's a bit of an oxymoron, but we will try and do that so that we leave plenty of time for discussion, because the point of this is for you to be able to ask as many questions as you can so we can give you as much information to inform the submissions that you would want to make to the hearings panel as a community board. So just to really briefly, where have we got to? It's been a while since we've been out to consultation, and it has been a reasonable period of time. We had a huge response and a lot of information from the community, and that's generated a lot of work. We've done all the coding of submissions. We've contacted a lot of submitters. We've talked to them. We've continued to have stakeholder meetings, and we are continuing to do that. Don't think that's a process that stopped, please. We've done all the consultation analysis. We've looked at and analysed a number of alternative designs, and I know some of you you've been and seen the presentation that we did on the public open day, so we have done that. I briefly want to talk to the first slide. which is a bit around the purpose of today. Again, there was a notice of motion back earlier in the year, and the outcome of that is the resolution to the side, which talked to us as staff, asking us to ensure that there was an extra consultation date, which we did do. This was the first round of consultation. Also, they wanted us to work with key stakeholders along Harewood Road, and I just want to highlight the fact that we have talked and met with businesses, residents and other stakeholders, community groups and other stakeholders. It hasn't just been about businesses, so we have talked to almost all the businesses along there, but we've also talked to a huge number of residents and tried to talk through and address the concerns that they've had or the issues that they've seen with the design that we've put through. We've also, and the point we're at is the piece in the green box there. Sorry, I can't see the board up there. Which is that that staff look at a range of options and have a workshop in public to talk to you about this before we get into the hearing panel process. So we aren't there yet. We have yet to prepare our report, and we have done a second round of consultation, as you're aware of, just recently. So Ollie on my left, where's my left? Yes, Ollie on my left is going to talk to the technical side of things, and is going to talk about what we've done on the consultation. I'm there to answer questions as we go, but I'll hand over to you, Ollie, and let you keep going.
Yeah, thank you. So just to help provide some guidance on what we'll talk through, we're going to do a quick update on where we're at, and then Anne's going to talk to some of the community and stakeholder feedback from the latest round of consultation, and then we'll quickly skim over some of the design changes that have been made. And I thought maybe as a starting point, it would be helpful if we ran through the route and what the latest consulted design was, just to reacquaint people with the route. So I've got this schematic up here, and then we'll jump through to the design plans if that pleases you. Yep. So starting at the western end, so we've got the underpass of Johns Road here under the roundabout. There's a two-way shared path along Christchurch and Waimac down to Harewood Road. It crosses over Harewood Road via some signals. We have a shared path on the south side that runs all the way up to Killamure Lane, where it changes to a two-way on the south side, continuing through to Nummock Boulevard, and then via signals crosses to a one-way on either side of the road. And that runs all the way through the Gardeners intersection with new signals, past Bishopdale Mall to the Bishopdale roundabout, where it changes to a two-way on the northern side of the road, through an upgraded Greer's intersection, and a two-way continues through to the Chapel Street area, where it splits to one-ways either side of the road, running past Mitre 10. So if I run through that on the consultation plan, so these are the plans that were available at the information sessions. We had those sitting in the middle of the room, highlighted so people could talk to them. And in the red shadows there, we'd identified changes that had been made since March, and there was a list of the changes and a description of what they were. So you've probably seen that already. So here's the underpass. You can't see that. Oh, yeah. Here's the underpass at the roundabout, shared path that runs along the south side. It retains car parking on both sides of Whitchurch Place. The path comes around and then crosses over via a central island on Waimairi-Harewood, and the shared path continues down. That's an existing shared path. And then there's new traffic signals outside Harewood School, and that's going to be on a raised speed platform, and that's for pedestrians and cyclists, the signals. And that leads us to a shared path on the southern side of Harewood Road. That's an existing path that we'll be widening out to 3 metres. So that continues along the southern side of Harewood Road, crosses over Stanley's Road, all the way up to Waldridge Road. New traffic signals at Waldridge Road, crosses over Waldridge, provides a connection across to the bus stops to the north. And we continue the shared path past Nummock Park, up to Kilmuir Lane. Now at Kilmuir Lane, it was too tight to continue the shared path on the property boundary, so we've provided a two-way on the south side running through to Nummuck Boulevard, where there's another set of pedestrian and cycle signals on a raised platform. And at this point, the shared path changes to a one-way path on either side of the road. And that's effectively where we start to enter the central section, or the 4-lane section. Continuing along through this section, there's a one-way on either side of the road. I guess we'll find out. Very close up. Just give me 1 second. Something funny's happened with that.
Try and jump into the other folder. Something there.
Was that? Yeah. So, look, we have some plans in the middle of the room if you'd like to continue with those there. For some reason, the drawings of the route have shut down and disappeared. So apologies for that. But maybe at the break at the end of this session, if you want to have a look at the drawings in the middle there, we have the blown up plans then. Okay, so the west end we had the existing shared path that's going to be widened. Then we run past Kilmuir Lane, where we have the existing trees. We couldn't widen the path, so we went up the two-way on the south side, through the central section. One way is on either side, and then at the eastern end it's a two-way on the northern side. So I now hand you over to Anne, who will run through the consultation.
So this is just a project update going right back to just a really quick reminder what we've done so far this year. So we held the original round of consultation at the beginning of the year from January through to March, and that was our major consultation, which generated over 1,300 submissions. On the 11th of February we had our notice of motion, which Lynette referred to earlier. And going into June we then held two separate community board briefings, both with Papanui-Innes and with Fendalton-Waimairi-Harewood, briefing on the consultation outcomes from the round of consultation earlier in the year. From there we then went and briefed the hearings panel. Again, this was live streamed, and that's again looking at all the options as well as the overview from the consultation earlier in the year. On the 26th of October we had our community information sessions. We had a session for elected members to come through and view our display, and then 27th through to the 29th of October we held 3 days in the ex-ARA campus building in Bishopdale Mall, where we opened up for the public to come through and look at all the work that we'd done since the close of consultation and all the different options, and the team were available to answer questions. From there, and during that time, we also started a second round of community consultation where we prepared the plans with showing all the design changes from the first round of consultation, and sought community feedback through that session as well. And through the whole year we have continued to make changes to the preferred option, and we've also continued to meet with a number of businesses, residents, organisations, and these have continued right from the beginning of the year and still continuing now. So this is the results, just an overview of the feedback that we've received in the consultation that we've run just recently. So as I said earlier, we had 3 community information days in Bishopdale Mall, and we had approximately 150 people come through on the 3 days that we were open. Just to briefly mention, we did have to, due to COVID-19, run a booking system, so to keep the numbers manageable through each of the sessions. So we kept the numbers at 20 per session, and they were really well attended. We had catered for 400 over the 3 days. But the great thing about having the 20 per session, it meant that people spent quite a bit of time reading the information. It meant that they could speak to a member of the team, and that they could have some long conversations without sort of coming to a drop-in, which can get quite busy, and people actually don't get the opportunity to speak to one of the technical team. So that was a really good advantage of having the booking system. And so, yeah, like I said, it meant that there was the space in the room for people to be able to have a look at the information. We sent an invite to all previous submitters, the 1,300, and we also delivered hand-delivered an invite to the original drop area, which was approximately 2,000 houses, because we wanted people, even if they hadn't made a submission, to still be aware of the information day so that they could come along and view the information and have a look at all the work that had been done. We received 85 submissions, and again, we just asked for comment, and we did, when we were doing the analysis, we did a breakdown where we still had 34 people that were really clear they still did not support the cycleway. We had 28 submissions where they gave a really clear indication that they really support the cycleway going ahead. And again, there's that sort of 24 where there's no really clear indication whether they support it or not, but did provide us with some valuable feedback. And we received 17 submissions from residents who live on Harewood Road. And just another quick few numbers is that 39 of those 85 submissions were from people who attended our information days, with the other 46 were people that didn't attend, and we did that based on people, because we had to record people's names. The 17 submissions from our residents on Harewood Road, we had 3 who clearly supported, 7 who didn't support, and 7 who there was again no clear indication. And of the 85 submissions, 64 of those were people who had previously submitted in the first round of consultation, so we had 21 new submitters. What's the next slide? Oh, yeah, we can put that up. That's just a quick photo of our information days. We did have more than one person there, but that just gives you a quick snapshot of the material that we had. It was a really good opportunity where we presented an animation of how the roundabout worked. We felt in the first round of consultation, people were quite confused with the hard copy drawings of how the roundabout actually operated with the signals. So we were able to provide an animation of the roundabout system, which was really well received by people, and it made it a lot clearer to people on how that particular part of the cycleway would work. So that's just a quick look of what the room looked like. So that was really cool. So just going into our feedback themes. So the key concerns that were noted by submitters, probably one of the ones that generated the most submissions was around the cost of the project. People still feel that the cost is very high, where there's other priorities across the city, and that it's a waste of money, and they don't think that it will get used by, they don't see cyclists using Harewood Road at the moment, so they don't think that it will be used. We still received submissions where people were opposed to the lane reduction, and also safety concerns with having a cycleway on Harewood Road, and there was a lot of discussion around how people were going to get in and out of their properties while living on Harewood Road, and concern with the concrete barrier, people who have trailers, caravans, and people that have to reverse in and out of their driveway. So a lot of discussion with the team around concerns. So a lot of people were able to come in and look at the detailed plans and talk about how it affected their individual property, and have the opportunity to talk to our designers. There was still concern around parking lots, both residential and with the businesses that are on Harewood Road. We can go on to the next slide. The benefits, the feedback, so we still had, we had a number of submissions who support the cycleway, and actually we got a lot of acknowledgement from people who could see that some of the changes that had been made to the original design based on the feedback that we had received. We talked to a lot of people. We had a cycling group through, and they were really supportive of the fact that we're actually providing a safe cycle facility in this area of the city. There's a number of people mentioned there's quite a gap in that part northwest of the city, and there's a lot of other cycleways around other parts of the city. And the number of people that spoke to us about the connections to other cycleways, not necessarily just our major cycle routes, but also out to Maclean's Island, Rotorua, people do a big loop right out to the Christchurch Northern Corridor and come along down the Waimairi-Harewood cycleway connecting into Rotorua and the Groins, and then there's a gap to come back into the city, and people feel quite unsafe coming back into the city down Harewood Road. And also talking to us about the other design options that were presented. And we have a design that has been sort of socialised in the community, and we were able to share that information, and we also got some support for that design through our feedback as well. And again, people acknowledge the fact that by providing the cycleways, it does help with the climate change emergency that we're faced with, the reduction in carbon emissions. And just a recap on the community board submissions from earlier in the year, and that's just a highlight. I won't go through those again. We've talked about those at a number of presentations. So just the highlights and the concerns. Both community boards support the cycleway program. There is a concern from both community boards around the parking loss and safety and tree removal, but also, like I said earlier, initially there was support from both the boards for the overall cycleway program in the city. So I think quick snapshot.
Thanks, Anne. But before we move on, are there any questions from the community board or any discussion points from that?
I just had one that was on out of the 34 that didn't support. The next slide showed the reasons why. I thought it might have been financial because someone was saying that huge cost.
Yeah, cost was probably, in terms of when you break down the numbers, the cost of the project, there were 16 submissions, so that was the number one concern that was raised, and that was 16.
Thank you for just reinforcing the question or the point that Mike was asking. Could I get you to press your speaker buttons when you ask a question? That's so that the people who are on Zoom will be able to hear you.
This is too flash for us.
Oh, there's a little button.
I see it. I've been here before.
Yeah, so other questions, Bridget?
Yeah, so I've got a question around consultation, then a question around the preferred design. So maybe Anne, I'll start with the question around consultation, just so I'm clear. So in that first consultation that we did, there was 1,348 submissions, and then there was the 85 submissions. So were submissions, were those submissions for like the second round of consultation? I'm just trying to understand the timeline of...
So the 85?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 85 were from the second round of consultation that we've done just recently.
Okay, cool. Was there opportunity, and was that open for anyone? Like, are we surprised that that there's fewer submissions in that 85 compared to that first round of submissions?
Yeah, we were probably, I could say that we were surprised that there was not more. I thought there would have been more. So so all the previous submitters, the 1,348, were contacted about the information days, and that there was a second round of consultation, so they had the opportunity to submit again, so they were notified of that. When we delivered the flyer to the approximately 2,000 properties about the information days, we also said on that, provided the link to our project page, and right at the top of the project page was the link to provide your feedback on the updated design. So I think as a team, we were surprised that it was as low as what it was. I think we expected to have more feedback. Yeah.
Right, but everyone who submitted in that first go were all contacted.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Now I have a question for Ollie. So if we could go back to the latest preferred design, that would be great, just so it's easier to...
But just, Ollie, as you're going back to the latest design, Ali, I can see your hand up, and I will come to you next before I come to others in the room.
Cool.
Welcome, David.
Hello.
David, if you grab a seat on this side, we've just got that physical distancing thing happening. Yeah.
You've got food.
Oh, so Ollie, it's the big one with all with all the options that we can see?
Oh, yes.
I'm good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, that one there. So, see how there is. Okay, so we've got. I'm just keen to understand the. I'm right. Thanks, David. No. I'm about to ask a question. So, see how we've got. So we've got the shared path on the south side, and then we have the two-way separated south side, and then we've got the one-way separated on both sides. I'm keen to really unpack this, and it might be that the questions have to be saved until in the second half of the workshop. But I just want to understand: do we have the data on how many car parks are like? Is there some way that we can see the data on? I'm just keen to understand the rationale why that particular option is preferred. So keen to hear that first, and then maybe I can ask the car park question.
Yeah. Well, it might be better if we continue on and we'll briefly touch on all of the options that were considered through the 4-lane central section.
Okay, cool.
And then we have all the background material on the number of parks removed for different options and yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll hold fire. Thanks.
Thanks, Ollie. I'll just take a question from Shirish.
Thank you. Is this okay? So first, a compliment to the staff for arranging the community meetings. They were wonderful.
Thank you.
And a huge contrast from the first meeting, which some of us will remember, which was held in the Breen School. So thank you for that. And second, 2 questions. Do you have an overall map which shows what has changed between then and now at a broad level? And second question is, there is a proposal to extend one of the routes along Harewood Road. It's under consultation, which finishes soon. And does that impact our design in any way? So it's Route 17, I think.
Is there?
Is that, bus route? Oh, right.
Apologies. My understanding is that any changes that we're proposing do not impact what ECAN are proposing around number 17 bus route, or the 28, whichever one it is that goes up there.
Ellie, thanks for your patience.
That's all right. No, thanks. You can hear me all right?
We can, loud and clear, thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll do a song off my last album then. I've just got 3 really quick ones. Are the trees the reason that the cycleway has to change from one-way to two-way to one-way? Are the trees the main reason for that?
No, they're not.
Okay, thank you. What kind of feedback doesn't indicate support or no support? I was really interested in that figure because it was a significant number.
Where it said no clear indication. For support.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what kind of feedback are you getting that's not showing positive or negative?
It would be where people have said, I don't know how I'm going to back into my driveway. So they're not saying they don't like it or they do like it, but they're just raising a concern, or they might talk about something to do with the design. But without giving sort of any really clear indication, I really love the cycleway, it's great, I'm going to use it, or absolute waste of time and money. And when they didn't give any clear indication, I didn't like to sort of try and second guess whether it was a support or not support. So it was it could be about the design or access or something, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. And just finally, the comments around, I never see anyone using the cycleway now, and I just wonder whether it's going to encourage people to cycle. And then you mentioned the cycle group that came along and talked about how this is a real gap. Clearly, a cycle group is going to advocate for more cycling regardless, and it's a citywide group that's doing that. Have you heard from, for example, the schools, any other groups, even residents, or have they been asked directly, will you use it if it's there? I'm just trying to understand whether there's an indication of whether there would be, or there's an indication that there would be an increase in the number of cyclists should the cycleway go ahead.
Yeah. I'll just jump in quickly because probably something you can answer. Just to clarify, it wasn't just the cycling group that said there's a gap in that part of the city. It was also individual people that cycle in that part of the city as well. A group came along, but there were certainly other individuals that mentioned the same thing. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of the school,
And let's just, the other thing I'd just like to add is that it wasn't necessarily spokes.
No,
It was
wasn't.
Wheelies Wednesdays, and so it wasn't necessarily a cycling advocacy group that came along either. So we had cycling
I
groups,
think,
but yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Lynette. I think the point I was trying to make generally was it's the localness of this. I'm just wondering whether, the people who live in the area are the ones who are saying, yes, we will use it more.
yeah, we definitely had some residents that did say that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's for a lot of the routes we've had any. Sometimes you'll get a school that will contact and say that they are really keen on riding, like Papanui High School with the Papanui Parallel. But a lot of the routes, it's people riding to work, some people riding to school. It's a big part of the community that won't submit on the consultation that will end up riding. And I think it's a couple of slides along from this one here where we look at how many people are riding at the moment and how many people have increased their riding in the city over the last 2 years.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
You good, Ali?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Simon.
Thank you, Chris. Firstly, on the 2 rounds of consultation, I know there's been a sort of sifting out of sort of overall whether how many people were perhaps for or against. But my understanding is the consultations were on the design as opposed to the route, or whether we should or shouldn't have a cycleway. And I just want to check, was there anything in our consultation material that communicated the impression that it was perhaps a referendum on whether it should happen?
No, we just asked for comment on our concept,
Right.
rather than do you want to suck away or don't you want to suck away.
Thank you.
Yes.
And then just a couple of design questions, and it might be one that Ellie was touching on as well. I think there might be sort of 5 different modes along that length of cycleway in terms of one-way, two-way, shared path. Just wondering sort of how that sits against optimum design. If we were designing the world's best cycleway, would we do that?
It's all very route specific, and if we consider this route here down the western end, there's a shared path already on the southern side of the road. We did evaluate having one-ways on either side of the road or a two-way on the north side, but in terms of the ability to cost-effectively provide a safe facility, having a shared path through there up to Nunwick Park works really well. Through the central section, there are a number of options considered there, 6 options. Providing the one-ways on either side was the most intuitive, safest, and it provided a balance of the available parking. At the very eastern end, so down by Maitaten, Golden Age, there were definitely 3 options looked at for that section, a two-way north side, south side, and one-ways. Their recommendation was to go with one-ways east of Greers, but that removed all on-street parking. And so the feedback from the community boards, the joint boards here, was that that the impacts on the businesses and the community was too great, and that a two-way facility was preferred through that section. So that ended up with a two-way then on the north side east of Greers, and then a connection of 2 ways to the roundabout. So it's very specific to how we can provide a facility as to what impacts it would have on the community, the businesses, the road and access.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Bridget.
Yeah, I've just got another question around consultation for Anne. So did we gather the data on the submissions around what options submitters favoured within each of the sections? So you know how it's sort of divided between, like, there's sort of the 3 main sections. Do we get the data on what submitters preferred with a range of different options within those 3 sections?
No, we certainly presented all the options at the information days. and they were also available on the website, all the different options that were looked at. As part of the consultation, like we left it quite open, so we just asked people to provide feedback. And certainly we received, as part of the second round of consultation, people did come back with a preferred option that they preferred over our preferred, I guess if that's what you want to say. So we had, so option 3, for example, which had the slip lane on the south side and the road moved over. When Ollie goes briefly through it, so option 3, we received 4 submissions that favoured that option. We also received a couple of submissions that preferred concept 6, which was the taking all the trees out of the central median and putting the cycleway down the central median. So definitely when people came along to the information days, they looked at the different options, and there were people that did like another option over the preferred option, and some of that reflected through in the feedback that we received.
Thanks, Bridget. Ollie, I think we'll push on with, can I just check with David, any questions at this point? Okay, thanks, David. Ollie.
So if we sum up what Anne was talking about in terms of the feedback, you would have seen this already. It just provides a pictorial of where most of the consultation feedback was and what their general themes were. At the western end in blue, some people really liked the signals outside the school and at Waldridge. Some people weren't so happy with the signals at Waldridge because of parking removal. Harewood School was very supportive of having the signals and the safety of the children. Through the central section, removal of a traffic lane was a very key topic, and the congestion that would lead to with the removal of the lane and signalisation of the roundabout. And then connected to that is the removal of parking for businesses and residents, and parking specifically around Bishopdale Park, during events that are on there. Bishopdale roundabout, the removal of trees, and in the latest design we've managed to retain all bar maybe 3 of the trees. There's sort of question mark around that until there's some more investigation done. Down at the eastern end, down by Golden Age, feedback around a 2-way outside rest homes and the impact with elderly arriving and leaving. And Chapel and Sale Street being swapped around for one-way movements to make that 2-way safer. And there's a lot of support for the Breens Gardeners traffic signals that was consulted on in 2019. So Anne's already talked to this, but it's always good to see a pictorial. And this was around the feedback of where are people riding at the moment. And there were a lot of people that came along that were, I would have said, retired, so 65 plus, that are riding out to Kaiapoi, riding out to the Waimakariri, and they're using the new Northern Arterial, so that's the shared path that follows the motorway. And that's really opened up a part of the city and some longer rides that people couldn't do previously. And they also ride along the Waimakariri River. And as part of that link and connection, there's an obvious link missing between the Harewood underpass and heading back towards the Northlands Shopping Centre, Papanui parallel area. So there was a lot of feedback to say there's a wee triangle there that people like to ride, but they feel really uncomfortable when they're on the Harewood Road section of that. And they also talked a lot about continuing up Kiwi 2 driving, heading up towards the city, towards New Brighton and the pier. So there's some quite large routes and some very excited people about seeing something happening in this area.
I think electric bikes help with the length of some of these rides as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Look, we heard that people don't ride on there at the moment. We never see anybody. So the table on the left, you probably can't see it. It's a bit small, but that's up on the website. And what we've done is we've taken the counts that are used from the council standard counts and just pulled that into a summary table to show how many people are riding the route along Harewood Road at the moment. The other thing we heard is that the projected volumes, people aren't going to start riding. You're never going to get this estimated volume of 1,000 trips a day. So the table on the right there, it's pulled from the mode shift, regional mode shift greater plan which is a Waka Kotahi document, and that's showing the number of cyclists in a 2-hour period around the central city. And you can see clearly from 2018 to 2020 that there's been about a 20% increase in riders in the city every year. And that's about when the MCRs have really started to come online, or the major cycle routes. So people are starting to use the facilities that have been constructed. Design changes and themes. During the information days, people said, you're only making these changes for businesses. We hear about 2 or 3 businesses along the route and all the changes you've made for them. What are you doing for us, the residents? And so the table in the top right corner, that just demonstrates, out of the 67 changes, where were those changes? You know, who are they for? Some of them are for cycleway users with bike stands, some around parking and the ease of vehicle access, amenity with the retention of trees, and pedestrians are making it easier for people to cross and providing additional crossing points and wider bus stops. We heard about this option, which is the cycleway in the central median, that we've shown that removes all of the trees in the middle. And the question was raised, well, why can't you keep the trees? When you end up with the clearance from a traffic lane and clearance from the tree, you end up with a 1 metre wide cycleway. If you look at a recumbent bike or a bike trailer, they're 900 wide. So a 1 metre path doesn't cater for them. So if you're looking for people that have mobility impairments, this path would exclude them from using it. So just to briefly touch on, through the central section, what are the 6 options that were considered? This is the preferred option, which is one ways on either side of the road. So this here is viewed towards the city. There's a one-way cycleway adjacent to the central median. The option we just talked about, which is a cycleway in the central median, and that removes all of the trees. A shared path in the berms on either side. There was a lot of people that came along and said, do this. They really liked this idea, but for safety reasons, it's not an option that would be recommended. Main road on the north side. This has been very well socialised, and that provides all of the traffic on the north side of the central median and a slow access road on the southern side. A 2-way on the north side, which removes all of the parking on the northern side of the median. Then, around emissions and travel time. We've built a model and it's provided an estimate of what the increase or change in travel time might be along the route. We've had that independently evaluated, and the results that have come back from that were presented in the emissions technical note that you have been provided with. I'm just going to provide 2 slides that summarise the key points from that. This graph here shows Harewood Road. 00 in the corner is Papanui Road, and down at 5,000 is the Johns Road. So it shows the route as you travel from Papanui Road down to Johns Road. And the red line shows the increase in travel time as you drive down the road at the moment. So as you come to the Greers intersection, you stop, you wait, you see the red line goes up, and then vehicles start moving again, and it follows the trajectory up to the proposed Breens Gardeners intersection. Now at the moment, the red line continues straight through Breens Gardeners, and it ends up with a travel time at the end of something like 450 seconds. Shown in green is the cycleway proposal. Now, if you look at that, you can see that there's an increase in travel time along the route. It's in the order of 40 to 60 seconds. And the key increases in delay or congestion along that route is at the Breens Gardeners intersection, which are where the new traffic signals are. Also at the Greers Road intersection, where there are safety improvements. So to help understand that a bit further, we did the yellow line. And what the yellow line does is it takes the existing road, adds in the safety improvement at Greers Road, and adds in the new traffic signals at Breen's Gardeners. And the overall increase in travel times in the order of 23 seconds. So in this case here, out of the 40 seconds increase in travel time, about half of that is because of improvements that aren't cycle related. So the independent review came along, looked at it and said, actually, we agree with what, or concur with what was told to the hearings panel. Now, the other thing that raised that, with an increase in travel time, what does that have in terms of emissions? Is it going to be negative on the community? So this graph here shows the CO2 production on the vertical axis, and then it shows the increase in vehicle emissions because of the scheme. Now, this increase in vehicle emissions is looking at the area of Harewood Road out to Sawyers Arms Road and Wairaki Road. So it picks up all the rerouting of vehicles and the vehicles that go onto the side road. So it shows there's a very small increase in emissions if people don't start riding. When people start riding, there's 700 tonnes less of carbon emissions. So people have hopped out of their cars, started riding the bike, and there's a big saving. So the net decrease in emissions of constructing the cycleway and having people change mode is a reduction of 700 tonnes a year. And as Anne mentioned, around driveways, people were concerned about how do you exit the driveway? And we've pulled together 2 visibility templates here. The one at the top shows the existing situation. So we've got a vehicle sitting at the boundary, about to pull out. And when they're sitting at the boundary at this point here, and they look to the right, they can't see any traffic. So they need to pull forward. And when they pull forward, they have some limited visibility along Harewood Road to approaching traffic without blocking this near side lane. But talking to the residents, and the feedback we had is that's not really what they do. What they do is the drivers here pull forward and block this lane, and cars coming along here change lanes and go past them. So how is that going to work with the scheme as proposed? So this second diagram shows the driver again sitting at the property boundary. And from the property boundary, they now have visibility between the parked vehicles to see whether there's a gap. It's not enough to pull out, but it's enough to see whether the cycleway is clear and whether there are any vehicles driving through this section. And then they pull forward like they currently do. But the position they can pull forward to now still allows a vehicle to pass in front of them. They can see a lot further along Harewood Road to select a gap in the traffic. So they won't be blocking the flow of traffic on Harewood Road. And that was a concern for a number of people. The other scenario that we haven't presented here, but I can talk through, is reversing out of the driveway. And it's a similar scenario. You stop at the property boundary, you can see whether there's a gap in the traffic, and then you can reverse back and partially enter the lane and then pull forward. So it doesn't block the movement of traffic on Harewood Road. That's all we've got.
Thank you. Thanks, Ollie. Now, I'm mindful, Bridget, you've got to disappear in about 10 minutes, so I'd like for us to start the discussion, if that's okay, and let's just balance the energy. If you need to use the bathrooms, to disappear, do that, or grab some water over by the door. But Bridget, can I start with you? Any questions, comments, or clarifications you'd like?
Is this working? Yeah, there we go. Yes, so I did have, so that question that I was going to ask before, that meaty one, just about when we were going through the different options, and is it okay if I ask that now? Is it the right time to ask it? Yeah. So it might be helpful if we go, to that slide with all of the different, the big one that takes you through the different sections and the different options.
With the table?
Yep. Oh, it doesn't have a table.
Like back at the start?
Yeah, it's more close to the start. Yeah, that one there. Cool. So, okay, and it was kind of pointed, I feel like Simon was sort of asking this question at the start in a way. or hinting at it, which was we go from shared path to two-way separated south side, and then we get to the one-way separated on both sides. That's quite a big change, isn't it? Do you mind just unpacking for us what's the rationale behind choosing this option, and what are do the benefits around that option outweigh the negative impacts, being a loss of car parking and the ad hocness that comes with changing it to the one-way separated on both sides?
Yeah, so I guess the first point would be that this is a reasonably long route, 4.6 kilometres, and not everybody is riding the full length of the route. Yeah. A few people will, but there's a lot of movements within that section. So Nunwick Park, for example, is a key destination for sporting events. Bishopdale Mall, and people are coming out of the side roads and riding over a short length of that. So if I consider it from the western end at the underpass, I talked about the shared path on the south side. Essentially, well, that's that photo in the top right there, top left, is that's an existing path. And the most cost-effective option for that section is to widen the existing path. We considered one-ways on either side of the road there. And what that did is narrowed the road down. It removed any potential for people to pull over onto the side of the road, and it had a higher construction cost with concrete medians on either side. It links in well to the school and ties in also well to Nunwick Park with the existing shared path in front of the park. So in terms of the selection of a shared path through that section, it was the lowest cost option that had minimal impacts on vehicles travelling and the community that it passed through.
Yeah, sorry.
You can ask a question? Yeah.
Well, so I appreciate the rationale for why we're doing the shared path on that end. I'm just keen to know, why does it then change to the one-way separated on both sides?
Yes, okay. So continuing along through the central section, we did look at a number of options through there. And if I go through to the pictorials, that might be better. Okay, so this is the one-ways on either side. And what the one-ways on either side do is it provides a facility where riders are travelling in the same direction of vehicles. People coming in and out of their driveways know to look to the right. They always look to the right and they'll see a rider there. It does require the removal of a traffic lane, and all of the options that are safe and viable do require the removal of a traffic lane. It comes down to how much parking needs to be removed. And this option here, compared to all the options, removes the most on-street parking, and through the central section it's about 50% of that. And out of that 50%, 20% of it is to improve access for bus stops, sight lines for pedestrians. So if there weren't any cycleway works through here, 20% of the parking would need to be removed to bring the road up to current standards for sightline requirements and bus stop access. This option, which is the paths either side of the central median, it also removes a traffic lane. It removes a lot less parking, so it removes 20% of the parking. But it has a disbenefit in that to safely provide for the riders, the U-turn pockets need to be closed, and access to the side roads is restricted to left in, left out. So it has a greater impact on the wider travelling public, and it wasn't preferred for those reasons. It also requires any rider to enter that facility to cross over a traffic lane. So if we compare that to the preferred option, if you're on the north side of the road, you can enter the cycle lane without having to cross a traffic lane. You can't do that when it's in the central median. This option here, very well supported by the community. A lot of feedback to say, just do this. And interestingly, a lot of people said the trees in the middle drop so many leaves. And particularly across from Bishopdale Park, a couple of people there that said they have piles of leaves that are a metre high outside their property, and it doesn't matter, they can remove them every day and they're back there again. And council do a really good job at removing them and coming more frequently, but the leaves are always there. So if you chop the trees down, they'd love that. But it doesn't look very nice, and it also retains the 4 traffic lanes. And with those 4 traffic lanes, there's an existing speed issue. So traffic along the road at the moment has an average speed of about 55 km an hour. If you compare that to Fendalton Road, that's 50 km an hour. So it's about 4 or 5 km an hour faster along Harewood Road than what we'd expect. It also means that any person trying to get into that central median needs to now cross over 2 lanes of traffic that's travelling at a higher speed, so it's less safe. This here provided the shared path on either side of the road. And while there was some support from this because people thought it could work quite well, I don't think what was really well communicated to them was that it removes the same amount of parking as what the preferred option does. And the reason for that is when a person is turning into their driveway or out of their driveway, they still need to see people riding along on a separated cycleway or a shared path. So it has that same parking loss. But that aside, you can see in the bottom left, there's the blue car coming out of the driveway. Where you have high fences, that driver can't see whether there's a person on a scooter or a bike coming along the shared path. So it's not safe. It doesn't meet MCR standards. The road swap provides a arterial road all on the northern side of the central median. So on the left side, that's where all the traffic would be. And on the southern side, it provides a low-speed access road with a 2-way cycleway. Now this works well for riders once they're on the facility, but it has the similar issue of being in the central median that all riders on the north side of the road need to now cross over 2 traffic lanes to enter the 2-way facility. It also results in double the volume of traffic outside properties on the north side of the road. And the offset of that is that for the people on the south side of the road now have maybe 1,000 vehicles a day, so it's a much nicer environment on the south side. It does require indented parking bays on the northern side to keep up the parking numbers, and that has quite a cost associated with it. And we're looking at in the order of 3 million above the consulted option in civil works to provide this. And that doesn't include the relocation of underground services. And we do know running under the parking bays on the north side that there are 3 11 kV, so high voltage cables, that will have some impact on them. So this wasn't preferred because of the impact on residents on the northern side of the road and the additional cost associated with the construction. A 2-way on the north side, this could work quite well. Probably the biggest downside is no parking on the north side of the median. And there's a short section in the consulted design between Greers Road and Bishopdale Roundabout where we have this design, and there's been strong feedback from the properties there that there's no parking outside their properties. They really don't like it. Our evaluation is that providing less parking but providing it on both sides of the road provides a better outcome for residents than more parking all on the south side of the median. This also requires some of the side roads to be restricted to left in, left out to improve the safety for the 2-way. So I hope, does that answer the concern?
It does. So just so I'm clear, when because when we were looking at the submissions, there was a lot of talk around option B. Just so I'm clear, is this not option B, option 3? Is this the option 3 that we're talking about?
This is option 3.
I'm sorry, this is option 3. Okay, cool. So so where there are issues. It comes down to safety, and it comes down to one side losing more parks over the other in a way, doesn't it? If you're looking at putting the cycleway to one side, whatever side that ends up being. So, but aren't we losing more car parking if we choose the preferred option that's currently there? So it's sort of like, do you see what I'm saying? So the preferred option, you're losing a lot of car parks, but actually if you went with an option that's stuck to one side, you'd be keeping more car parks, albeit, one street would lose more car parking than the other, but wouldn't there be more car parking left over overall? Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's about the equity of that of where that parking is what the team have tried to balance.
I see.
So it's about saying, actually, to get across 2 lanes of traffic, across a median, across another lane of traffic, to get to your car parking is less equitable than trying to balance, losing a bit more. Ollie can talk to the absolute numbers, but it's trying to balance that equity of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so it's trying to sort of keep both sides of the street happy by kind of taking away both car parking on both sides in a way, isn't it?
Or it's acknowledging we're balancing everyone's needs. That's really what we're trying to do. Yeah. Equally unhappy.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm trying to flush out here. You're sort of you are in a way. It's sort of
There's going to be happy people and sad people with any design that's put forward. It benefits somebody and it disbenefits somebody else, and it's a real balance as to what weighting you'd put on that. And it's not just about the number of parks removed. We look at the directness. How easy is it to ride along? How well is it connected into the community? How safe is it to use? What does it cost to construct? There's a number of items that are considered.
And sorry, Ollie, and with regard to the parking, it was also looking at the demographic of people that live in the area and how easy is it for them to access the parking that is available.
Generally, the parking surveys show that Harewood Road has a very low parking demand overall, but there are some areas where the parking demand is very high. So Copenhagen Bakery, very successful business, both sides has a lot of parking demand. As you head down towards Mitre 10 and Northlands Mall at the other end, there's a lot of demand around that area as well. So we do look at what parking the demand is at the moment and whether there's capacity for the displaced vehicles to move into side streets or park further along the road. But for the general resident along the route, the parking demand is kind of 4 to 8 vehicles parked in a block on each side of the road. So if we remove half of the parks, there's still plenty of spare capacity there for the general use.
okay. And last question: do we as I sort of asked this at the start, but we don't have. Do we have the numbers on whether this kind of option, or whether it's this option on the south side or this option on the north side, whether there's more submitters have preferred these options rather than the preferred option?
No, from the feedback from the initial round of consultation in March, I think the general theme was that a third of people, maybe a little bit more, didn't want the cycleway at all. And a lot of that was because of removing a traffic lane or because of parking removal. They were just concerned and didn't want that. When we looked at the other people and what they had said, some were also interested very much in the bigger picture about the impacts of the cycleway, but maybe supported cycling overall, just concerned about what was happening in general. It's change, and change is unnerving. In terms of the specifics of supporting an option, in the second round, in the information days, there was a lot of support for the central median. A lot of people said they love the cycleway down the central median because it keeps 4 lanes and it doesn't remove any parking, and the trees drop their leaves, so it resolves that issue. Our feeling is that if we went out to the public with that, there'd be a really strong pushback of removing the trees. And we saw that at the Bishopdale roundabout, where we were removing 12 trees initially, and there's a lot of, you can't remove those that are iconic to the area. The other strong support was for in the berms on either side of the road, which we talked about, but that removes a lot of parking. I don't think a lot of people realise what that impact was on parking. The option that's in front of us now with the main road on the north side, look, it's been very well socialised by a couple of people and socialised with businesses there, but there was very little feedback from the wider community on that.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. I'm just going to come to Ali and then I'll come to you, Sherish. Ali, thanks for your patience.
No problem. Oh, can you hear me all right?
We can.
Okay, sorry, it's that button thing. I keep sort of mucking it up. Forgive me if some of these have already been asked before. I know that there have been a number of briefings held on this. How many trees would go if that central, if the cycle lane went down the centre?
Well, it'd remove all of the trees.
Yeah, sorry, I'm after a number.
Do we know the number?
I'd have to count them. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to count them. Ali, have you got another question?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
You just froze for a moment, Ali. We're going to
Yes, I
count
did,
those
yes.
trees. Have you got
very much.
another question?
Yeah, I have. Just going, oh yes, the parking loss for the central lane, there was virtually none. Is that correct? For the central median strip?
Yeah, that's right. It has a 20% parking removal, which is looking at the bus stop improvements and the improvements for pedestrians crossing the road. So the current standards now require longer bus stops and longer tapers leading into those. And where the pedestrians are crossing the road, the cars need to be set back further from those crossing points now. But it does have a
Understood,
minimal
thank you.
parking removal.
And also, sorry, I've just got a couple more. Where the lanes change from one way to two way to shared to, whatever all the length along, how are cyclists what's the way that cyclists move from one to the other?
Yeah, so approaching the signals, there would be a advanced loop that would detect the rider and provide a green light for them to cross the road, depending on how much traffic's on the route. We also add in wayfinding signage, which is signage to the destination towards Northlands Mall or Nunwick Park.
Yep, understood. Thank you. And that leads into actually what I was just going to say, because of course, being in Papanui area, we've seen, some of the pros and the cons of these shared cycleways and so forth. So what in your presentations or preferred options have learnings from other cycleways been considered? We've had some pretty nasty accidents on the Cranford Street area there because of that point you made about drivers just intuitively not looking where they would be expected to look if you've got cyclists coming, at them from both directions, when in fact they're used to them, coming from another direction. Sorry. So my question is, what learnings from other cycle ways have you incorporated into this?
Yeah, look, there's been a wealth of learnings over the last 6 years of working solely on the cycleways. A key one would be that the design standards that are used are very good, and when you start to compromise the design standard for the rider, it does have an impact on safety. And often compromising a standard to provide, for example, additional parking doesn't work out very well for the residents. They end up with restricted movements in and out of driveways. It's about trying to keep designs as simple as possible, and understanding that for any improvement and any change in mode, that somebody is going to have a disbenefit to provide equity overall.
And the key there, obviously, is to try and make it as equitable as possible, so there isn't one group that is more affected by that than another. I do understand that. Two other quick ones. I know you talked about the amenity being lost, and I think you said it looks pretty awful. I'm paraphrasing, but if those trees are removed, has there been any consideration to improving the amenity, say, on the right-hand side there, where it looks pretty awful anyway? I know it's just an artist's impression. But have you thought about improving amenity to make it greener? I mean, in Europe, for example, where you do have some of these, there is a lot of greenery in the areas that you can have greenery.
Yeah, there is, and the berms on either side of the road and the parking shoulders quite often are used to provide greenery. In this case here, we have high voltage cables on the northern side of the road, so there's no opportunity to plant any trees in there. But potentially on the southern side, but they'd be pepper potted. It wouldn't be a boulevard of trees like is there at the moment. So
Okay,
it's really
and
to
my
do with
last-
underground services.
Sure. And we had the same problem in Papanui as well as they have in others. And my last one is, you mentioned speed, and there seems to be some concern about, or thinking that it's positive to reduce this to one lane because that, and I may have misunderstood you, but that may improve the speed in the traffic. Can I just suggest to you that speed is an enforcement issue? I do understand that design has to help with that, but certainly what we're seeing in the Papanui area is it in fact increases frustration and creates some pretty appalling and dangerous driving. So have you given some consideration to speed versus frustration and poor driver behaviour, and speaking to the police too about enforcement with speed, which is in fact their thing?
Yeah. I think enforcement is almost the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. If a road is designed correctly, it's self-explaining. People can see that they should be driving slowly, and it's a combination of landscaping, narrow lanes. Sometimes we have to use chicanes and speed humps to really encourage some people to slow down. But there's always going to be a group of the community that the speed limits are a target or don't apply to them. There is a national program at evaluating speed limits, and we've seen a lot of that around the rural roads, and the reductions in speeds from 100 kilometres an hour to 80 to 60. This road here, it's appropriately posted at 50. We can encourage lower speeds by removing a traffic lane, which allows for faster vehicles to overtake slower vehicles, which occurs at the moment.
Have you considered frustration, though? I mean, I do raise this in a genuine way because we are seeing in our area that the frustrations that are created can cause some really dangerous driving. Is that a consideration? That's my last question.
I haven't done a speed limit review for quite some time, but I don't believe frustration in a urban situation is a consideration. On the rural environment, that is considered in terms of where's the next opportunity for somebody to overtake. But in an urban environment, a majority of people do stick to the posted speed limits.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. And has someone been counting the trees? I'll leave that with you, Ollie.
So we can come back to you around the number of trees. So there's 41 trees in the central median that would need to be removed.
41 trees. Thank you, Ellie. Shirish, thank you.
Potentially 60, depending on what the final design is.
So minimum 41, potentially as high as 60. We'll get that clarified for your submissions. Thank you. Shirish.
Thank you, Chris. An oddball question. I was attracted by the slide which is called the wider connections. And I'm looking at it now. If you could please bring it on the screen. That one. And you talked about how people come from north and all that. So is an alternative to Harewood Road still on the table? Or it's an absolute no discussion point? Because if you look at that, Sawyer's Arm Road, as has been suggested in the past, could meet the requirements of the people up north trying to link. So is that still on the table, or it's absolute no?
Look, I mean, the way I've drawn this line here, from the underpass, that's a key crossing location, and that's really fixed. The other end is down here at Northlands Mall. And in terms of the evaluation of potential routes, we did go up as far as Sawyer's Arms Road, and we went down as far as Wairakei Road to the south. What Harewood Road does is it connects to parks and it connects to businesses, and it provides a really direct route through to the Norwest Arc on Matson's Ave here. And the Wheels to Wings route has a strong connection for riders onto the Norwest Arc, heading down towards the university, and then onto the Northern Line, which is the existing route, heading to the south and then finally up to the north. So Harewood Road sits right in the middle and has the best connectivity. And when we evaluated these options, Sawyers Arms Road doesn't provide that same level of connectivity to areas of attraction for people. So Harewood Road is the route.
Coincidentally, it's the same truth for the motorists. The same reason applied to motorists, and therefore you have this balancing act that while you are doing the right thing for the cyclist, you are taking away something from the motorist, which are also using Harewood Road in good numbers.
That said, it is also important to remember that Sawyers Arms is actually in, I don't think your boards necessarily had it, but the other boards had a Simon, the other boards had or about to have, but have had a number of discussions about that whole corridor in that area and the changes in travel patterns. So, and we've talked before about Harewood Road versus Sawyers Arms Road, and Sawyers Arms is the link out past for traffic, for vehicle traffic. Sawyers Arms is the link out to McLean's Island and past the airport, whereas Harewood goes into the airport complex. I understand that. So it is a balancing act, and Sawyers Arms is also seeing increasing numbers of traffic, and it is seeing increasing numbers of heavy traffic. It carries a heavier proportion of heavies than Harewood does as well. So again, we come back to this balancing act that the team have been working through the whole time, because we don't have an ideal template across the city anywhere. We're always balancing all of the needs. So yeah, it has been a balancing act. That conversation, has been had on a number of occasions, but they have looked at all of those possible routes. And we always come back to Harewood Road.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if you look up at the screen there, we've got Kiwi 2 Drive going past the Northern Corridor. That's the key east-west route. So that links onto Anzac Drive around to Littleton. And that continues along Northcote Road and Sawyers Arms Road as the major arterial, carrying the heavy vehicles around the roundabout onto the Bruffs Road extension, McLean's Island, Pound Road, out to the south. Yeah, to the quarries. Yeah, so that is the key vehicle transport route, and Harewood Road sits below that.
Thanks, Ollie. Shirish, do you have another point or question? Thank you. Simon?
Thank you. I've got a question on option 3, but only one, and then some couple of questions on other topics. Might be helpful. Sorry, if we could have that option 3 slide up again. My question is, relative to the preferred design, what impact does the option 3 design have on U-turn bays and on cross streets and intersections along the route?
Well, it removes the U-turn bays because all the traffic is now on the northern side of the median. So properties on the southern side would have 2 access points, and that's into a one-way road. So it'd be a right turn or a left turn into properties on the south side. In terms of restrictions to side roads, it doesn't have any restrictions to the north-south roads.
Thank you. On the Bishopdale roundabout, there was mention of the feedback on, I guess, the understanding of how that roundabout would function and the value of having the animation in the second round of consultation. I'm interested to know where a partially signalised roundabout like that has been done before.
So up in Tauranga, there's a number of signalised roundabouts with the pedestrian cycle crossing facilities in them, and they're used extensively over in the UK.
Okay. On the carbon impact of the project, and apologies that in that report the technical note came through reasonably recently, so I've had a quick look at it. This might have been answered in it, I'm not sure. So my understanding is that we're looking at a net emissions decrease modelled of 700 tonnes a year. I'm wondering if any modelling's been done on the carbon impact of construction.
Not that I'm aware of. Not as part of this project. Don't know. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. And one last one, which is a little bit of a comment, but it's a compliment for council staff. There's a project outcomes grid that's available on the website that sort of shows the matrix of the different options considered and sort of how they score against different criteria. I'm just wondering if that could maybe be circulated to board members or put in the folder in the hub. I found it a really helpful way of just getting a big picture view of the different options and how they line up.
Okay.
Thank you, Simon. And Ali, thank you for letting us know you need to duck away as well. Thank you. Simon, have you got anything else done? Mike, any questions for you?
Just one, and I don't think I fell asleep. Greens Road to Mitre 10, how many car parks is going? And is it both sides?
No. It removes all the parks on the north side of the road and retains all bar about 4 on the southern side of the road. So it removes about 50% of the parking. I can give you the exact number if you'd like.
That's good. I mean, and that's also outside the funeral place?
No. So outside the Palmer Funeral on the north side, there'll be no parking at all on the north side of the road. Across the road from Palmer Funeral, within 200 metres of those businesses, there is 2 parks removed. And Palmer's Funeral's on the corner of Wilmot Street. So the cul-de-sac has been moved from Harewood Road up to Hawani Street, and then a P180 time restriction on the western side of Wilmot Street to make more parking available for Palmer's Funeral. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. They're not all Samoan funerals. They'll go all day. Thank you. David, have you got any questions or comments? Thanks, David. David, can I just get you to push the button, mate? Thank you.
No, so thank you, everybody, for giving up your evening and walking us through this. I'll start. I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm an avid cyclist myself. I use the Northern Arterial Bikeway and Bike Out to Rangiora 3 times a week. So I'm very, very consistent in using the spaces that the council has provided, and I enjoy them. What I have noticed is I've used a number of cycleways across town, and you've talked about this point on many occasions, is around the consistencies and the learnings. And I can think of Wigram Road over the overbridge there, where you have the pedestrians and the cyclists on the south side of the lane, or the Port Hill side of the lane, confined into a space of less than probably 2 metres. I think of the top end of Cranford Street, where you have, again, you've permitted 2 lanes of traffic, but you've put the cycles on the footpath. And so I really get quite nervous around our design standards and how we are potentially just we have lots of space up there, so you've taken lots of space, as opposed to potentially going, what is the best way to do it? And it scares me that we then think we've got an open checkbook just to build something which some people call over-engineered. And so do you have any sort of comments about why we can't sort of make it a bit smaller and a bit more cost-effective?
Yeah, I guess the key thought is that we have heard that people say they're over-designed, over-engineered.
Yep.
And the level of design and what we see on the ground is the level of infrastructure required to make people feel safe riding. And that's something that the funding agency Waka Kotahi have been studying and looking at what do people need to feel safe. And an on-road cycle lane, a bit of paint on the road, some people feel safe in it. But a lot of people are concerned about being rear-ended by a person driving. And when the separator is put in, and there's a cost to put the separator in, people feel a lot safer. And then the next part of that question would be, how wide do you make the facility? If we're putting a separator in, there's a lot of cost in doing that, whether it's 500 wide or 900 wide. There's a lot in traffic management. You've still got the saw cuts. There's a little bit of extra material. So the cost difference between those two widths isn't great. The cycleway width, though, it comes down to how the people are going to use it. And it's not all people on mountain bikes that are active and fit people. There's a lovely lady that came along who is a stroke survivor, and she rides a recumbent, and they are a wider bike. And if you make the facility too tight, they can't easily ride along there. They end up with very limited offset either side of them.
Yep.
And there's a great range in cyclist speeds.
Yep.
So this is designed to attract new riders, and new riders typically ride slower, or they might ride fast for the first part of the trip and then run out of energy and ride slower. And that can start to frustrate fitter riders and the commuters, the likes of yourself and me that ride a lot, that can ride a lot quicker. So you need to have a facility that's wide enough for people to be able to overtake the slower riders. And when you're on a bike, the difference between a path that's 2 metres wide and 2.2 metres wide is really noticeable, particularly when you're passing somebody. So it's a combination of making a person feel safe to ride in the first place, and then once they're on that facility, feeling comfortable and not feeling as though other people passing them are doing so unsafely.
So that's a really interesting point, because if I understand correctly, the cycleways are designed principally for slower or novice cyclists, because a cyclist by default is legally allowed on a road. So as a cyclist, I could ride down any one of those other roads next door to a cycle path, St Asaph Street, for example. However, I then become the frustration to the motorist, because actually they just go, the council's built you a path, get over there. But so are we actually, so Ali brought up the points around frustration. Are we actually doing a disservice to all cyclists by actually building them a path and not actually re-educating the motorist through design, which you talked about earlier, by making our streets wider instead of narrower, which actually that cyclists can maintain on the left-hand side and use that?
Can I just add one bit though, and Ollie has touched on it though, the fundamental principle of the design for the major cycle routes is to increase the number of people that we've got cycling, and the target audience for that is those interested but concerned. So that is all about those people that would like to cycle but don't feel safe enough to do it. So it goes back to what Ollie was saying around people need to be able to feel like they're going to feel safer. And it's a big step. So it is a balancing act. We are looking at all of our messaging and how we deal with this. And there is a, we're looking across the board at the moment around all of our messaging. But the reality is that any cyclist can use any part of the road, and they are entitled to.
Yeah.
And we do need to, and we do have that conversation quite regularly. Now, I understand the frustration around that. To be honest, in the central city, if a Fast and Furious goes through, you shouldn't be holding anyone up because you'll all be doing 30 Ks.
Yep.
But I'll let you carry on.
But, yeah.
He'll do more than 30 Ks.
But then I talk about the recumbent bike, 900 wide. I would challenge anybody with a 900 wide trailer on their bike to go down St Asaph Street in a car lane and actually feel that they have an ability to do it. So
you would be taking the lane.
Yeah, they would be taking their life in their own hands. But actually, when we design, so our lessons from St Asaph Street and our lessons potentially for here and every other cycleway is we're not actually. So if I'm an inexperienced cyclist that actually now becomes an experienced cyclist and I want to tow a trailer at 900 wide, I am then, our current design, as much as we have a cycle design, we're not accounting for me on the road, and that's what you want. You want me to transition from a cycleway to being able to be comfortable to bike anywhere in the city. And so we are limiting what we can do as a cyclist going out on an alternative street. And our designs here, we're going down a slippery slope to not actually giving the cyclist the opportunity to get off a path and go onto a different street. So if we go to even my home street in Hartley Ave, for example, we'll narrow it down because we want to reduce traffic. However, we should maintain our streets wider so that therefore the person who has got the 900 carrier, as the example was given, can actually go on another street. Hamilton Ave would be another one. There would be...
I think it's...
No, it's a question to understand why we don't design our roads to encounter all cyclists on all roads.
Yeah, but that goes back to, and we need to go, that goes back to the speed issue.
Yep.
So we're trying to, you narrow your road down, you slow your speeds down, everybody can share the space, and there is less frustration because everyone has less expectation that they're going to travel at a certain speed.
Yep.
That speed expectation is down.
Jump into the next question. I understand.
Yeah.
Jump into the next one, frustration. Have we, in our modelling and bits and pieces, looked at when the Friday the bin collection or the Wednesday bin collection up and down the road and the guys coming down and reaching the bins? Have we worked all through that through?
Yeah. Look, from the very first route that was constructed,
Are you
we worked very
comfortable
closely
with
with waste management on
Yep.
how they would collect the bins, at what time of day. And we also produce tracking paths for their drivers to say this is where you should go and stop and how you should collect it. So it's an ongoing discussion.
Cool. I've talked about consistency of design. We make a number of. So you had 2,000 in your item here. 2,000 cyclists in a 2-hour period. It's 100 and it's 1,000 in a 1-hour period. Was that at a single point?
No.
So that was over a pathway of.
So that's pulled from the Waka Kotahi report, and what that's showing there is trips over 2 hours in the central city, and it's over a number of screen lines around the city.
Yep. So that's almost a bit disingenuous to imply that there's 2,000 riders on a cycleway where we're talking about in a metropolitan area, not in a more residential area than potentially in a built city area where we would expect to have cyclists accumulated, all paths going from the spokes to the hub or to the centre. So we would expect that to be. I would like us to perhaps see some more relevant information to our residential areas and what those cycle numbers are. That's potentially a little bit. Yes.
Yeah.
And I understand your point. But
the objective of this was to show that people that are coming into the central city, they're coming from those residential areas.
Yeah. But it's not.
We're seeing
but it's not 2,000 people going down Harewood Road.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't trying to imply that.
No, I wasn't going to take it anyway. Sightlines. You mentioned 20% of the current part of Harewood Road doesn't meet the standard. Would that be consistent across the city that many roads do not meet the standard of sightlines? Yeah.
So what that was looking at is if you look at Harewood Road and the length of that, we'd need to remove 20% of the on-street parking to achieve the current design standards for bus stop lengths. And for sight lines for pedestrian crossings and intersections. So likely that could apply across the whole city.
So if we would potentially, if we were to any street that has a bus going down it, we would have to, that's probably a safe number to assume, even down, be it Rugby Street or in Dover Street where all the line 41 goes down or wherever those other ones go, that's probably a safe number that a lot of Christchurch roads 20% defective in their sightlines.
Yeah, and bus stop manoeuvring. Yeah, and it's a decision of whether, say for the Rugby Street example, a lower volume, slower speed road, look, is it all right if the bus stops out and impedes the traffic?
Yeah, but that's we can't mix. become concerned when we use an argument of it doesn't meet the standard if we're not prepared to enforce that standard throughout the city. So again, I'm just asking for consistency.
Yeah. And that is a bit like building code though, exactly the same. Standards change over time, and when we come in and do an upgrade, we need to bring it up to the current standards. So you're working on your house, the building code standards change.
I appreciate that, but
so
I'm
that's
not
why
having,
we're in this situation.
But I don't believe our board has received any briefings or workshops or papers indicating all of the defunct roads in our ward in an effort from the City Council to fix them. So if we're going
every time a change to the network is planned, we will be upgrading it to the standard. So it is exactly the same conversation as we have around building codes, and that when you live in your house, it may not be built to the current standard.
I totally understand your point.
But when you do building works on it, you have to do it to the new standard. So that's
I
every
understand.
report that comes to your board will be up to the current standard.
Okay.
Can I just check? I'm trying to understand how this is going to help you shape your board submissions. So that's just...
So my point around trying to do that is if we use the argument that we need to improve the sightlines, then actually if we weren't going to do anything on that road, which is an option, then actually it wouldn't require... it's 20% defunct, but actually let's not use the fact that it's 20% defunct to actually do an improvement. If we weren't going to do anything, as we've just explained, then actually it's potentially a red herring. You talked about local residents and their demographics and what they were done. So their ability to use cars and the need for bits and pieces. In the way in which we've surveyed that, and we take that into a weighting to either for or against, when we look at the submissions, are we actually then eradicating or toning down the effect of those that don't live in the area? I believe there's a considerable number of people, even from Auckland, that have submitted on this. So do we actually get rid of them, get rid of those submissions, and only take it to those that live within a cooey of the proposed change?
Anne, would you like to respond to that?
I'm not aware of the Murray 1 or 2 from Auckland in the original round of consultation. The majority of residents are from Christchurch. I'd say probably 99% of them. Within the area, there's certainly a high amount of submissions that were from people that live both on Harewood Road and in the wider area. And certainly there were submissions from people that live, you could say, outside of the area, but were supportive of the cycleway program that the council is doing in the city, and they see so they're supporting the program of cycleways, which is our major cycle program of works.
Do you think that's valid? Because it doesn't necessarily affect them in their own community. I mean, we've gone and talked to the local residents around the effects of the cars and those sort of things, but have we actually then tried to actively communicate with all car users throughout New Zealand around this as well? Are we being unfair?
No.
I think every submission is
or
valid.
Or being selective in our argument?
No. When we provide feedback, we provide everything. Or the feedback you get is like verbatim. We don't change anything. We don't restrict. I've been in this job for quite a long time. I can't think of any. So when we put a consultation on to have your say, anybody in Christchurch can submit. So elected members get the feedback table that provides addresses, but we don't make that public information. So what weighting you decide to put on that in a board is entirely up to you. When we provide feedback, certainly in some consultations we do, depending on what they are, we may look at, so for example, if we're doing a small pedestrian refuge island and we're taking out parking in front of 3 houses, we would be very interested in, for those residents, what that means, and perhaps someone from 3 suburbs away about a pedestrian refuge island. When a project is a project that is what we would call a citywide project, where it's part of a network of cycleways, and in this case, then certainly on my part, I wouldn't see anyone's submission less than anybody else's. However, how you
So I might have not
and I
explained
have,
myself. So you're talking about submissions, but if I understood, and I've forgotten your name, Lynette, and that when you looked at the data with local residents and their car use, I'm taking that was not through a submission process, but that was actually some sort of research that you undertook.
It was more about age demographic, to be honest.
So your age demographics.
The feedback when we did the.
Yeah, so I'm not talking about submissions and bits and pieces, but what I'm saying is we've actively, Lynette's actively looked at a group of locals and their car use, and we've then imposed that over the top of our design. We have then now gone and but we haven't done that universally across the city, yet actually we will take submissions from people from outside of the zone. I just think there's some inconsistency.
I think also the interpretation of what I said before was was not what I meant.
Okay.
When we did the first round of feedback sessions, what we learnt was we didn't have in our mind the age demographic in particular of the people that live along Harewood Road in particular.
Yep.
It is a very mixed suburb.
Yep.
It's got a lot of young families and a lot of
long-term residents.
Yep.
There's also a lot of elderly residents that live directly on Harewood Road.
Yep.
So that started shaping the conversations that we have with them, and we talked about at the start how we've continued to have and will continue to have one-on-one discussions with many of the residents and stakeholders to understand the challenges that they see with the proposed design and whether there is something that we can tweak or change or shift or just discuss with them so they have a better understanding of what we're proposing. So that was the demographic understanding that I understood.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about equity for car use, it is as much about equity of access to be able to get to their car. So for an elderly person to get across 2 lanes of traffic and then across a raised median is harder than for a young person.
Oh, no doubt.
And that's what I meant when I talked about the demographic.
Cool. That's great, thank you. I think from all my scratches and scribbles down here, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Generally, I am really supportive of it. I just think that the design's not quite there.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you, Chris. When I was watching the briefing that you gave to the hearings panel, a very interesting comment was made, I think, by the Mayor about charging stations and parks. And I think someone indicated that wasn't on the thing, but I'd be interested to see how that pans out, because I mean that would be something I think the community boards could actually put in parks. Because if we're encouraging people like me as a baby boomer to go and bike to a park and watch my granddaughter playing whatever, if I can charge it while I'm there, charge my e-bike.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you, Mike. Can I check if there are any more questions or comments or clarifications that you would like?
I have one question.
Sorry.
One question if we can, please.
Yes.
Can we design it any cheaper? Have we really put the pressure and the acid on dealing with it? So you talked about 500, 900. Can it be 300? You know, or it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people hurting in the city.
You can look at trying to reduce costs.
Yeah.
And that has an impact on what the final product is.
Yep.
And something we have learnt from starting with the Papanui parallel is to do it right the first time, and you'll end up with a better long-term outcome. So the cost of construction is comparable to the routes we've been doing over the last 6 years.
Yep.
So I don't believe it can be done any cheaper, but we're always looking at opportunities to save. And one of those opportunities is using construction companies that have experience and have learned a lot about how to build more efficiently. Same materials, but instead of taking 2 weeks, it's taking
3
a
days.
week and a half.
Could we build it in stages then? Could we?
Yes.
So we go Mitre 10 railway line through to, let's say, Greers Road, and then wait 12 months, go again, wait
It'll be
another
more
12 months.
expensive again too. So it
Oh yeah,
is
no
all a
doubt. But
balancing
actually,
act. It is
we
all a
build the
balancing
usage, we build the ability and the appetite for it.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
And we take into account any changes in technology, changes in demographics in the form of potentially any housing. Actually, that was my other question. So we talked, we had the point earlier, Sharish talked about Sawyers Arm Road. Is any of these designs absolutely on the assumption of other upgrades within the area? Because I know post-earthquake, so back in 2010, there had always been that we were going to take everything down through Sawyers Arms Road as a conversation piece from NZTA, and a number of those other sort of documents in those days talked all about this as a master plan, and so it's not a new thing. Is any of this conditional on other designs?
No, none of this is conditional on other designs. Other designs, and we talked about it in the briefing with the hearings panel as well about other. Ollie's talked about that, about other intersections that are potentially going to be impacted and we're going to have to do more work on. They're already on the books anyway, they need to be done. So it is building there. If I can take a real quick step back to the construction costs, we have worked really, really hard with our contractors to try and do things to the best value we can. The best thing we can do is work with them to undertake our construction in the fastest way we can. So that is, instead of taking 2 weeks, to take 3 days to do something. That is a bit chaotic and it's a bit nasty, but it does get it done fast. Our biggest fundamental cost in construction is our compliance costs, our health and safety compliance, our temporary traffic management compliance, and our environmental compliance. So that is the actual costs of the physical building have not skyrocketed massively over the years. Bitumen costs have gone up and down and they fluctuate, but really the biggest cost is in our compliance cost. It's the cost of the road cones out there on the road. So the sooner we can get something done, which is good for that community, the sooner we stop that cost ticking over. And they are working, they're very conscious of that too.
Is NZTA capped their contribution?
No, it's a percentage contribution. It's a percentage contribution.
So if it turned out to be a $40 million job, they're still up for 50%.
They might have a conversation with us, but
Oh yes, I think they would be. They wouldn't be only. It wouldn't be only them.
it wouldn't be. But it wouldn't be the first conversation they've had. Their own projects do that too at times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. Simon?
Thank you. Just a last question on consultation process, I guess. In noting that a number of submissions, perhaps more on the first round, were not, I guess, local submissions and how we should be treating those. In the opinion of staff, whose job is it to weigh sort of local versus non-local feedback? Is it the role of staff to do that, or is it the role of perhaps the hearings panel and the committee that would make the final decision?
That's the decision maker's role. We're here to provide you clarity of advice and clarity of information and clarity of our technical expertise. As decision makers, that's the decision maker's responsibility, be that a hearings panel, council or our community board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Shirish, are you okay? Mike? David?
Brilliant.
Thank you. Any closing comments, Lynette or Ollie or Anne?
We've got one last quick slide to just highlight, I can't read it, the next process. So we're at
number 9.
We're at number 9. Sorry, I'm finding this. Next one is Number 10, the hearings panel, the submitter's verbal presentation to the hearing panel which is expected early in 2022. So your submission will inform that hearings panel as each community board. The deliberations will happen after that, and then it will be their recommendation will be forwarded to the Urban Design and Transport Committee in following that. So it's a bit of a breather before Christmas, and then after Christmas we'll be hitting the ground with the hearings panel again. That's the plan. But I think I would like to highlight, and please pass on to your boards, if there's anything we can do to help, any information we can assist with, please ask. We want you to have all the information you can and to make the best submission you can.
Thank you, Lynette. Any questions on that forward process, Mike?
Just number 14's missing. The party at your place. I don't know your address.
Party on Hussey Road.
There we go. Thanks, Mike. Nice to have a bit of humour at the end there. We started with karakia, and in a Ngai Tahu context, I think we would close with karakia as well. Simon, would you mind? Thank you. Thank you.
I can't offer a council karakia for closing, but I can offer a te orohau one. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki a ihu karashi, me te aroha o te atua me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, aki, amen.
Kia ora. Thanks everyone. Go well and appreciate your time.
Thank you.